everyone, and welcome to this month's Veeam 100 show. My name is Safiya Mohamed, and I'm a community analyst here at Veeam. Today, I'm joined by Veeam Vanguard Justin Farrugia, consultant at Data3, and former Veeam Vanguard Ben Young, field CTO of APJ here at Veeam. How are you both doing today, this evening for you?
Yeah,
Great,
doing great down here.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. I am joining from Columbus, Ohio this morning, and we have Ben coming in from New Zealand and Justin coming in from Australia. Be sure to let us know in the comments where you're joining us from. We would love to know. We are back. We took a brief hiatus in May, but we're back this month with our 17th Veeam 100 show, having a conversation on tackling disaster recovery head on with Veeam Recovery Orchestrator. If you're unfamiliar, maybe this is your first time tuning into a Veeam 100 show. This is a monthly show happening usually, we say usually, on the first Thursday of every month. It's a chance for you to meet our Veeam 100. These are our top technical evangelists from the Veeam community, our legends, vanguards, Veeam MVPs, where they can showcase a project that they're passionate about sharing with Veeam's wider community. But before we dive into today's topic, of course, we need to know the guests that are joining us and the experts that you'll be hearing from today. So Justin, would you like to give a brief introduction of who you are, where you work, and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So Justin Farrugia. So I'm based down in Australia. I'm a consultant and I work mainly in the data protection space. So Veeam is obviously a key area of my expertise, and I spend a lot of time with government and enterprise customers working out their backup solutions.
Thanks, Justin. Ben?
Yeah, and so Ben Young, as you mentioned in the intro, former Veeam 100 member, and now I get to sort of sit on the other side of the fence as a proud member of Veeam, and I work as a field CTO for our APJ region and get to engage with not only our Veeam 100 and community members, but also customers throughout the region and partners and then everything in between. So it's going to be neat to also learn a bit more about Recovery Orchestrator, because it's not actually a product that I've personally used a lot in a former life, using a lot of other Veeam products. So keen to see what Justin's got for us tonight.
Definitely. Well, before we dive a bit into the project, of course, this is a community show, so we like to talk about people's community journey. Justin, you've been a Vanguard since 2023, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. So can you
That's correct.
discuss getting started in technical communities and how you came to join the Veeam Vanguard program?
Yeah, so probably for me, I was very fortunate to have actually a close relationship with another former Veeam Vanguard in Australia who now also works at Veeam. So I got to build a really good relationship with him and learn a lot about the Veeam products, and that's probably where I gained my own expertise from. And what I really enjoyed doing, or actually from a learning experience, I really love looking at reading blogs, watching videos, YouTube videos, and the like. And I thought that might be something that maybe I could do and help others in the community. So for me, I started my own YouTube channel, and I focused a lot of my area around the Veeam products and how Veeam can fit into many different types of organizations. And that's kind of where I built my opportunity to get into the Veeam Vanguard program. Veeam obviously looked at that and thought that that's something that quantifies being in the program and obviously helping the greater Veeam community across the world, and that's how I got in, and I've loved every moment since.
Awesome. And Ben, you are a former Vanguard. You've actually appeared on the Veeam 100 show as a Vanguard, which is interesting. Like it's been so recent that you've joined Veeam, because we're only on the 17th episode, so a little under 2 years now. But can you talk about the impact that community has had on you and your career?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have got to meet people like Justin, the amount of relationships that I've built with Vanguards in Europe and or legends in Europe or the States, and then building relationships with staff at Veeam has definitely led to me to this role that I'm in now, and I'm grateful to kind of have this opportunity to do this on the global stage. So I certainly wouldn't have, well, I don't think I would have been in this position had I not gone through and kind of been a member of the Vanguards for a number of years, and then that obviously turned into the Veeam 100s, and there's the amount of exposure that program can give you, not only to people, but also, talks like this, presenting at Veeam, Veeam On, and various different other community events around the globe. So, yeah, definitely a big impact on my career.
Yeah, That's amazing. Power of community is the connection, like what the two of you have said. All right. Well, I will give it to you both to dive into today's topic and let you take it away.
Nice. Well, I suppose, Justin, just for our audience sake, I think it would be worthwhile just kind of, why don't you give us a quick overview about what Veeam Recovery Orchestrator is? I suppose a lot of it's in the name, but like, what is it? Like, fundamentally, break it down for us in sort of simple terms. What is Veeam Recovery Orchestrator?
Yeah, sure. So basically, Veeam Recovery Orchestrator is a tool that you can use and bolt on top of your existing Veeam environment. It gives you the ability to automate and simplify those disaster recovery processes. So integrating with your Veeam backup and replication environment, it can tackle your VMs, your physical servers, your cloud workloads, all of the above, and actually simplify that process to getting your workloads up and running in the worst times that an organization could potentially face. VRO is a very simple product to use, and it's super supportive on VMware, vSphere, Microsoft Azure, and as we know now, there's support for Hyper-V.
Yeah, nice. And so just to be clear on that, it's actually orchestrating existing Veeam technologies. The data is not necessarily flowing through Veeam Recovery Orchestrator. Is that right?
No, that's right. It's leveraging what's happening in the Veeam backup and replication environment and just simplifying those processes. So in a typical VBR environment, when you go to recover, say a bunch of virtual machines, you typically have to provide and answer questions in that process. So you need to decide where it is you're going to recover, what resources you're going to be using, where VRO sort of simplifies that process and you pre-plan that ahead of time, so that when you need to recover, you just go into the console of VRO, click execute my recovery plan, and all those questions are answered and the recovery takes place.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. So you're obviously a fan of VRO, given that you've taken your time out of your evening to come talk to us about it, which is great. Like, what resonates with you so much about this product, and why do you feel customers should be kind of looking more into it?
I think it's just the automation, and as I said, it is very simple to use, and it does simplify some pretty could be normally complex processes when you're undertaking a disaster recovery situation. So reducing human error, reducing your recovery time when you're in sort of critical high stakes scenarios. You just need a product that's actually just going to work and do the task that you need to do, and that's what VRO really is all about, and that's what resonates with me the most. And when I talk to my customers, that's what they like to hear as well.
Got it. And so do you think, because obviously part of VRO is also a reporting element, kind of like being able to report back to the board or the CEO or whoever that might be around what your disaster looks like, has it been tested? Does the ability to quickly fail over in a predictable way resonate as much as the reporting, or is the reporting kind of looked at in a different way? Like, yeah, do they like them equally, I guess, is what I'm kind of angling at here.
Look, the reporting is definitely an important component to the product. So being able to create your recovery plans and also test your recovery plans all in isolation, that's another key aspect of the product. And then also get the reporting from that. So when you create a plan, you actually can produce a really detailed report that you can provide to your internal stakeholders, your external stakeholders. If you've got insurance companies you need to deal with, or auditors, these type of documentations, which can be very cumbersome to create manually, is actually fully automated from the Orchestrator software. It looks at everything that you're trying to achieve and can put it all down in paper, all in full detail of exactly what you would be expecting in a recovery situation.
Got it. Yeah, that's an interesting point actually about insurance companies. I never really thought about that angle. Obviously, I think a lot about internal governance, but is that something that you find particularly in Australia, that people, is it with cyber insurance, require these type of things to be audited and reported on?
Well, absolutely. It builds their case when they do need to present what type of solutions they have in place. What are they doing to protect their own environment? So it's not always just about what type of network security you have or edge security you have. That's all part of the preventative measures, but also what happens after disaster strikes. showing some documentation that not only shows what it is that you're trying to achieve, but because it's tried and tested as well, you get documentation on that as well, and you can present and show to whomever you need to that your organization can meet RPOs and RTOs and things like that because it's been tried and tested.
Yeah. Nice. And like, what about, like, I know we had a release, I think 7.2 earlier in the year. So has the support for Azure and Hyper-V helped conversations with customers about that kind of data portability play, opening up more DR scenarios, maybe customers that don't have parity on their kind of like their compute clusters and storage and things? Has that kind of changed the game a little bit on the conversations you're having?
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly opened up more conversation. So, as most people know that who use VRO, it had been for a long time just a VMware solution. So if you've got a 2 data center setup, VRO was very good at helping you doing that recovery process. But now, after some time, Azure was supported, so the ability for those single site data centers to be able to recover into another set of resources such as Azure, that became supported as well. So you didn't have to have that secondary data center. And now we fast forward to earlier this year, and Veeam released their major iteration of VRO, which included the Hyper-V support, which is a massive turning point for the product in my point of view, especially given everything that's happening around the Broadcom world. Customers are now sort of weighing up their options and seeing whether or not, is VMware going to be something that we're going to stay with into the future, or potentially could we move somewhere else? So now Veeam can still have a conversation with those customers if they're already using VRO, or if they need to think about their disaster recovery strategy. Hyper-V can be a talking point now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I suppose, speaking of talking to customers, for anyone out there that knows about VRO and has customers that they think this could be valuable for, or maybe it's like an internal resource that's trying to sell it up to their, their manager, like, what's your pitch? What do you lead with? We've obviously covered a few topics, but what do you find resonates most in your pitch with getting buy-in from your organizations that you deal with?
Yes, I think VRO is a very easy sell to a lot of customers. So, I mean, for me, talk about automation. So if I talk to customers about what their current DR strategy is at the moment, they probably couldn't answer to any sort of degree of or any level of importance that would say, yes, I can 100% guarantee I can recover my resources. So automation is a big thing. The compliance around automated testing, proving that you can meet your RPOs and your RTOs, so all your SLA adherence. VRO covers that and can let you know through the reporting capabilities that you're actually meeting that. And then everything that that Veeam talks about its resilience. So VRO is still helping us protect against ransomware. So as we recover our workloads, just like we can see in VBR, we can do our ransomware check. We can check for malware in our recovery processes, and we can quarantine anything that might be of that might be nasty in our backups. We can actually quarantine those VMs or workloads off. So just all those type of things, I think, really makes a conversation easy around disaster recovery. And when we talk about VRO in particular, it's just those 3 key things: the automation, the compliance, and the resilience. They're the 3 things that I'll talk about very quickly, and I think that does resonate with the customers.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so you've sold it to them. They're on board. I guess this might be a loaded question, because I've definitely asked a few customers when I was on the other side of the fence this exact thing. And what do you find? Do you find that customers typically have a well-documented plan, regardless if there's any automation involved at all? And how do you kind of guide them through that if they don't have a recovery plan?
Yeah, well, I'll open up conversations around what they think they're doing right now, and to be honest, most will lack any sort of comprehensive DR plan. They think that they're doing backups, and that's usually a tick in the box. But you could open up the conversation and simply ask, well, what happens if your production environment goes down? And often I'll get an answer, oh, that's okay. We've got tapes in a vault, stored in a bank. We'll just go and grab our tapes. But I kind of explain the fact, well, your site's gone down, so maybe you don't have a tape library anymore to utilize. You don't have any resources to actually recover your workloads too. What is that process? So getting people to think about DR in a more complex manner than just simple backup and recovery, because a lot of data protection specialists, including Veeam, will say backup and recovery is one conversation, disaster recovery is another. And that's exactly how I lead it in with many of my customers. So talking about what they're doing from a DR plan, yeah, most of them have nothing in place. Their documentation is another thing. It's often outdated. It's usually incomplete, or it doesn't actually match up to anything that they're running, that they're operating right now. So it's definitely easy to open up the conversations and get them to start thinking about disaster recovery as a separate conversation to what they're doing for backup and recovery.
Right. Yeah. So I know I used to find it challenging. You'd go on and engage, even outside of an orchestration perspective, you would start talking with customers about RTOs and RPOs, and they would often just have a one blanket answer for everything. And we would often find trying to engage with different business units, and they might not even know what to understand. So you'd go around in circles a little bit within an organization while they all tried to work out what their RTO and RPO targets should be for certain groups of applications. Do you have any advice for that type of scenario where an organization just can't work out what their RTO and RPO is, but they obviously can't protect everything with kind of like the tier one gold-plated kind of tooling and backups and everything like that?
Yeah, it's a complex question. It sounds really simple when you just say, what's your RTO and RPOs? And often I can tell you now, the customers that I work with, they probably don't actually answer that with any degree of certainty. So there's usually a bit of a misunderstanding about what it actually means. And even if they do say something, they've probably overestimated what actually is really, really achievable. So obviously having a conversation about what RTO and RPO is important, but probably it's a conversation that probably isn't to be answered by the IT administrator or the backup administrator. It's an answer that's probably got to go up a few levels in the business and understand, well, what happens if our environment goes down? How long can we be offline for? How much data is it okay to lose if something does happen? And that's when you can start building the conversation about what it is that the business might need to meet RTO and RPO. So that might then lead into another conversation around, procuring, dedicated hardware and the things like that. So the RTO RPO question is a difficult one at times and hard to get any answers out of, but always leading up the organization to those C-level people who can actually give us a definitive answer, and then usually we can work backwards from there.
And I suppose then get it documented, and also the decisions that went behind why you chose that RTO and RPO, so that when you're going to review these things a bit further down the line, you know where you landed, or at least you've got a good starting point. So you're obviously a big advocate of VRO, and you obviously have lots of customer conversations, and you've obviously sold a few of these now. Can you give us any examples where VRO has actually made like a significant impact? Like, has anyone actually that you deal with had to actually pull the ripcord and do a full-scale failover, or has it made an impact in other ways in the organization? Give us get a bit of insight into that.
Well, I've fortunately not come across a customer that's needed to pull the cord and actually go with a recovery plan in VRO. But I have worked with several customers who have had to engage their own disaster recovery plans and go through that really nasty and arduous process where they haven't got really any documentation and don't really know what that process is, which has led to conversations after the fact to talk about something like a VRO product. But one customer I probably could speak to that I've worked recently with, their recovery plan was to replicate storage. So they're a 2 data center site, and they were just replicating storage. It's a very sort of basic storage devices that they were using. So it's just that simple replication from site A to site B. And their recovery plan was a 10-page document that said, well, if we lost site A and we need to go back to site B, then we would have to log into the software on the storage. We'd have to mount the volume. We'd have to present it into VMware. We'd then have to search the storage and present all the virtual machines back into the VMware environment. It was a 10-page document with a bunch of screenshots. Never really tried or tested, and it's a process that seemingly would take probably 2, 3, 4 hours to even think that you can complete before you can actually start getting workloads up and running. So that particular customer was happy to have a look at VRO, and I'm actually in the process of delivering that the product for them. And all of a sudden, instead of worrying about replication from storage to storage and having that manual process, we're now going to replicate our virtual machines from site A to site B. We're going to leverage VRO, and in the event that they need to spin up their replicas in the secondary site, we're going to give them a one-button click to select from the VRO platform, and all of a sudden their workloads are just going to spin up automatically. So something that was going to go from hours to complete is now down to literally seconds, and having workloads up and running within seconds.
Yeah, and it opens it up for a lot more people too, right? Like you say, probably the one person that wrote the document knows it the best, the former document, and if they happen to be away that day, then someone's going to probably fumble through that document and make mistakes along the way, and probably take more than that 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, it's a lot of risk as well, right? There's a lot of risk and a lot of unknowns. Things badly can happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. Do you typically use a demo when you're talking to customers as part of your pitch, or do they typically get what you're talking about when you're talking about like orchestrating kind of DR?
Yeah. Look, for me, demo, I love it. I love a good demo. If I can, it's one thing to hear it, it's another thing to see it. So demos is something that I love to do with my customers on a regular basis. It doesn't matter what product it is that I'm working with, but especially with VRO, it's sometimes a little bit hard to really understand what it is that you're getting. It sounds really, really good when you talk about it, but I think everything that you want to know about this product, once you see it, then you'll fall in love with it very quickly.
Yeah. And I suppose like a very brief follow-up to that is, do you often POC it in customer environments, or typically do they see it in the lab and then you can continue the conversation to get the go or no go?
If their environment allows for it, definitely a proof of concept. If we can actually spin it up in their environment, 100% that's the way I would go. Short of that, I'll definitely show them a demo. I'll spin up my own lab environment and simulate a disaster recovery or an execution of a disaster recovery, and they can see it for themselves.
Nice. Well, you've sold me. And we were talking offline before. It sounds like you've got a lab environment kind of ready to show us some bits and pieces. So would you mind giving us kind of a brief demo overview and talk us through the kind of key functions that you like in VRO?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look. So hopefully you can see my screen nice and clearly. So we're just in the Veeam Recovery Orchestrator portal. So I've already had it all pre-installed and ready to go. Just to give a quick overview of what my environment looks like in my lab. I'm running 2 data centers. For all intents and purposes, there's a Melbourne data center and it's a Sydney data center. They're kind of linked up with a WAN link, or a virtual WAN link, if you like. And I've also got an IPsec tunnel going into Azure, so I've got some workloads running up there as well. That's just to give a bit of a brief overview of the environment or the layout. Here in the Orchestrator panel, once you've got it installed, the first thing you're going to need to do is configure a few components around your infrastructure environment. And this is all really straightforward stuff. So it just needs to know where is your VBR server, and we need to put a VRO agent on it. So in my case, I've got an enterprise manager server, which links into my VBR server. So I've got agents there. So VRO knows where my VBR server is. Here, I provide information around my VMware environment. So I've got two vCenters, one based in Melbourne, one based in Sydney. So I provide this information to VRO. This basically allows VRO to look at what's happening in Melbourne and what's happening in Sydney, and I can use these 2 vCenters as recovery locations. This is the new feature in Microsoft. Now, I don't have a Hyper-V environment, but this is where you would add your Hyper-V environment if you do. One important note is that it does require the System Center Virtual Machine Manager to work. So you need to have that in place in order to use Hyper-V. And the other cool feature around VRO is the ability to recover from storage snapshots. So in my case, I've got a supported storage array using NetApp. I've got one in my Melbourne data center, I've got one in my Sydney, and I'm replicating my storage between the two sites. And if I need to, I could create a recovery plan that allows me to recover workloads from storage snapshots as well, which is a really, really neat feature.
Is that something that you would lead with? Like if a customer has supported storage platforms, this is where you would start them with, or is it kind of it depends?
No, well, it does depend, but absolutely, if they're already using storage snapshots within Veeam, then definitely we can leverage that into using it in VRO as well for recovery purposes. It doesn't necessarily always fit for purpose, but definitely if you're doing storage snapshots, this is a really quick way to get VMs up and running.
Yep.
Not everybody is necessarily replicating from site A to site B at the VM level. They might be just doing it at the storage layer. So this is where it's perfect.
Like I say, it gives you flexibility. If you've got it, you've got it, or you can blend it with traditional replication as well, which is pretty great.
100%. And then just a quick note on the recovery location. So when you create your recovery plan, you obviously need to speak to the sources of where the data is coming from, but then you also need to provide your plan. Where are we recovering to? So this is kind of what we discussed a little bit earlier, where in VBR, you typically have to answer a bunch of questions on how you want to restore. This is where you kind of answer those questions prior to a recovery event. So here you would add in your storage devices, you add in your VMware environment, your Hyper-V environment, and also your cloud environment. And that's kind of be the focus of this demo today. So I'm going to be recovering a few workloads into Azure. And if we have a quick look just briefly into what a recovery location looks like from an Azure perspective, I know that this spins around just for a few seconds, but it will be done. But here we can actually provide all the information regarding our Azure environment into this recovery location. So giving it a name, you then get a recovery option. So what can you actually recover from? So what are you doing in Veeam for backups? This is the allowable restores that you can conduct. So agent backups and VM backups. I'm just doing VM backups, so I just tick the one box. You provide information on your VBR server, and then it's just adding in the required details about your Azure subscription. Now I've already pre-populated or pre-entered information around my Azure subscription into VRO earlier, and that automatically populates. Here we would provide information on what are we actually recovering from. Given that we're going to do this demo with Azure VMs, I've got backup copies of my workloads going into an Azure Blob storage, so I'm going to recover from that particular repository. If I flick back in here, and this is my VBR server, and if I have a look at my backup repositories, it's actually looking at this Veeam Azure storage repository here. So I've got backup copies going into here, and that's now been seen right here. So this is where we're going to be recovering our VMs from. It's important to use a proxy. So when we're recovering into Azure, we want to use an Azure-based proxy. So I've built I've got actually VBR to build a proxy server in Azure. It's actually a component of the backup proxy section, which is this one here. So it's an actual Azure proxy. So you fill that information here. Veeam Recovery Orchestrator picks it up. And then it's just all the basic stuff here. So what region you want to recover your virtual machines into, what resource group. Here you would provide some just information around what type of VMs are going to be used for recovery. So my environment's pretty basic, so I'm just using basic VM series. So when my virtual machines are recovered, they'll use this VM series with standard SSDs, but you can change that up and use more than just the one. And then the important part is just your network mapping. So I only have 2 subnets in my on-prem lab, and I've created 2 equivalent subnets in my virtual network in Azure, and they've been mapped directly. So any virtual machine that's on this particular service port group in my on-prem world will be mapped to what is called JTA servers as a subnet in Azure, and the same for my security subnet. And then this is a cool little feature. So when we do a recovery, if any of those virtual machines pick up, if they get picked up for any sort of malware detection, I can actually ship them off to a separate subnet in Azure called or a quarantine subnet, where they can be fully isolated which is also a pretty cool feature.
And that's using just the standard, well, not the standard, but the great feature within VBR that, secure restore type
Correct.
functionality that's been in VBR for a while now.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, and that kind of now leads into the demo. Now, a demo will otherwise take probably half an hour to complete. So I've actually pre-recorded this process. So I'm just going to bring up the video. So I've simplified the process a little bit. I've cut a lot of the waiting time out. But I just want to quickly show from the Veeam website just what a typical Azure-based architecture looks like with regards to VRO. So looking at your on-prem VMware environment, so you're a single data center, so maybe a Veeam Recovery Orchestrator with Azure is a good fit for you. So in this instance would probably run our VBR server and our Veeam Recovery Orchestrator server inside of Azure. Don't necessarily have to, but that's probably the kind of the recommended process. Now, hopefully now we're going to flick over into, I'll just fast forward it. So in the lab, we're going to only recover 3 virtual machines. So we're not simulating a full disaster recovery situation. I'm going to power down 3 virtual machines, which are part of my disaster recovery plan. So that's this server here called Mel AD Connect, MELSEC, and Mel Sub CA. So those 3 virtual machines are going to be powered off. And what I want to note here, and this is what I really love showing to the customers, is showing how a virtual machine in one moment can be running in my on-prem VMware environment, but very shortly we're going to be running it in Azure. So just testing just for the viewers out there, this is us connecting to this particular server in the on-prem world on the .10 network. So we can understand this is definitely an on-prem virtual machine. And I'm going to show that I'm not going to touch anything other than execute the recovery plan, and that this virtual machine or these virtual machines are actually going to be powered up and accessible without any human intervention. So I'm just powering them down right now. This will just take a moment, and then we'll log back into the orchestrator software. Okay, I'm going to prove that now it's no longer pinging. And now we'll go into the orchestrator software, and now I'm going to execute the plan. So creating plans is pretty straightforward. Basically, you just choose the resources that you want to recover, and then you just provide your recovery location as I showed earlier, and that's pretty much all to it. At the moment, it's in the disabled state, so we just need to turn this into the enabled state. And as you can see, I've got a few other recovery plans here, but we are focused on the one down the bottom. Now I'm going to execute it. VRO obviously is going to require some credentials to actually execute something like this. Obviously, this could have a drastic effect if used improperly. So we want the right people to be executing these plans. So we do need some credentials. And here we're just going to verify that we're going to recover it to our Azure-based resources, which we're kind of happy about. We will click next. Not sure why I'm circling around that often. A readiness check. So all your recovery plans perform regular readiness checks just to make sure that the plan is viable. It checks your on-prem resources, your recovery resources, make sure everything is available and that you're going to meet your RPO, so your backups and everything have been working in the background in the meantime. Here we provide information on what restore points, so we're just using the latest restore points, and here we're also just flagging if we want to do some malware detection as well, which we will very quickly. And obviously we've got the ability here to restore and connect to the quarantine network should a virtual machine load up with malware. And that's pretty much it. And then we just hit the finish button. And for me, I'm not using the best of Azure-based resources, so that the process probably takes a little bit longer than maybe a corporate setup. So this should only take about a few minutes in this video, but what we see here now is the actual recovery plans taking place. So there's some pre-planned steps. So we do some licensing check. We check that the backup server, so the VBR server, is ready to go. And then also checking that our recovery location is ready to go as well. And then once that's complete, then it actually gets into the grunt work of actually getting those VMs out of my Azure Blob storage and converting them into Azure-based virtual machines. So every VM undertakes a licensing check, so you do need to be licensed. And then it's the process of creating this cloud VM. And that's probably the grunt work of this recovery journey. So it's very, very detailed with what processes it is undertaking. And you can see here that it's checking all the target networks, making sure the mappings are going to be correct. I'm going to be targeting the correct network security groups when these virtual machines are powered on. So I'll get all the security that I expect in my Azure environment. And then if we just scroll a bit further down, it's now spinning up that Azure-based proxy virtual machine that I configured in VBR, that VRO is leveraging. And that's obviously going to be the workhorse to getting the workloads out of Azure Blob and getting them into virtual disks ready for presentation to an Azure virtual machine. I think I do flick here into my Azure environment just to have a quick look. Here we go. So here are my virtual machines in my Azure environment. It's not that large. I've got a domain controller and I've also got that proxy server. So that proxy server is now spun up. It does just sit there. You don't have to be running that 24/7. It will just spin up when you're actually requiring to use it or when VRO needs to use it. And then once it's spun up, then you see the actual restore process. And this takes obviously a little bit of time in the real world. So I'm just going to fast forward it a little bit. But you can actually monitor what's going on.
Yeah, it's nice and granular on what's happening, right? Which is important.
100%.
It's not just a black box.
Yeah, that's right. So, and it's going to let you know. So in testing, sometimes you get some errors. So you can have a look and see what the errors are relating to, and then you can go back and fix them. So if an error does occur while you're in a recovery process, the actual plan doesn't just stop, it halts and asks you to see if you need to rectify anything, and then you can retry the plan again, and it'll try and execute whatever task that it failed on. So it's really, really useful from that point of view. And here, as you can see now, it's finished restoring. It's now converting that VMware disk now into an Azure virtual machine disk. And we can see one of the other workloads is now completed. And I'll just skip it along a little bit further.
Yeah, show us that ping window. That's like the litmus
test
that's right. Of all good live demos is a good ping.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just waiting because the Meld AD Connect, that particular VM is my subject. So that's the last one to complete. And if I just forward a bit, I think I just showed that the process took about 16, 17 minutes to complete in real time. That's 3 virtual machines, about 60 gigs worth of data on average Azure infrastructure, I would say. So it's pretty fast. And here we can see now those virtual machines showing up in Azure. They've been assigned a private IP address, so there's no external access in my VNets. They get a private IP address. What should happen now in the background is in DNS will eventually update itself and replicate back to my on-prem world. So the virtual machine that we're looking at here is an on-prem virtual machine. So when I do this ping, I can see, okay, DNS hasn't fully updated yet. So I've tried this ping pretty much immediately after the VM's powered on. So I didn't expect it to be working straight away. I can obviously go and force DNS to replicate. But if I wait about 10 to 15 minutes at the most, DNS should automatically update itself. And if I give it the old IP config flush DNS and then try again, now I can see now I'm pinging the Azure IP address. And also now I can remote into the server. So I haven't changed anything. I haven't done anything. This virtual machine that we remoted into a few moments ago was a VMware virtual machine. And if 10 minutes later, it is now an Azure-based virtual machine up and running and ready to be accessible by its users.
Love it. Great stuff. That is that's pretty impressive. Yeah, I've never seen such a DR process go so smoothly. So look at
that. And to be honest, when I did this all worked the first time as well. So I was setting it all up and it worked the first time.
Yeah, you recorded it to cut some time out, right? So we weren't sitting here for 20 minutes waiting for Azure to do its thing. Very quickly, you mentioned you set up a YouTube channel, like where can people find you? You obviously have a series on this stuff. Where can people learn some more other than the kind of Veeam technical guides and other bits and pieces that are in the community? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so I've got a YouTube channel called Labbing It. I've got a large number of videos coming out for all about Veeam Recovery Orchestrator. So going from the processes of setting up not only just the software, but also the hardware. So for people out there who might want to even just practice for themselves, so even things around NetApp storage, I've fully shown how you can set that up and test it and look and see how VRO works with storage snapshots. So I've got a bunch of videos coming that includes doing this more detailed Azure recovery, VMware to VMware recovery, and I'm just started the process of building up a Hyper-V environment. So I'm looking forward to demoing that as well. So there's going to be a bunch of videos around Veeam Recovery Orchestrator, giving it a lot of love at the moment.
Good stuff. All right. Thank you very much, Justin. That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
No dramas at all. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course.
Right.
I want to add some additional community resources for VRO, since that's the topic of today. We do have a VRO Heroes Den, Vero Heroes Den, on the Community Hub. It's a forum dedicated to all things VRO, as well as our VRO Essentials course from Veeam University, both great resources for newbies and experts alike, on top of Justin's YouTube channel and all the great resources he'll be sharing there soon. Thank you both for joining us today. This was great, nearly a 40-minute episode, always the thorough episodes that are the most amazing because you go into great detail, especially coming in so late at night with all this energy and knowledge. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure our community does as well. We will be back next month for our next Veeam 100 show, so stay tuned for that. If you can't wait and you need community resources now, definitely check out the Veeam Community Resource Hub. You can find content from people like Ben and Justin on there, as well as our other great community members. Thank you both for joining today. Thank you to our audience for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.